Hello everyone. Here are the 10 African countries most indebted to France. Starting with number 10. Mauritius Island. With 422 million euros of debt, the gross domestic product of the Republic of Mauritius represents 101% of its gross debt. This is what Africa Business Insider reports. Mauritius is ranked as the 5th most indebted country in Africa. The country often borrows from institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF. Mauritius has more than 1.2 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 9. Gabon. With 487 million euros of debt to France, according to the most recent IMF report, Gabon's debt is expected to reach 12 billion euros in 2024. It is mentioned that this level of debt exceeds the threshold of 70% of GDP established by the Economic and Monetary Community of Central Africa. The political transition that took place in Gabon in August 2023 did not resolve the problems related to the country's public debt. During the period when Ali Bongo was in power, Gabon had accumulated a significant debt, which remains a burden for the new government. The country will have more than 2.4 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 8. Nigeria. With 600 million euros of debt, Nigeria has gone through several economic crises and has had to renegotiate its debt several times. External debt management is a major issue for the Nigerian government, often influenced by relations with creditors such as France. Nigeria faces greater economic challenges, including fluctuating oil prices, high inflation and governance issues, which may affect its ability to repay its debts. Nigeria's total debt was in the tens of billions of dollars. It was estimated at around $100 billion, but this figure fluctuates depending on borrowing and repayments. Nigeria owes money to various countries including France, China, and other nations. Nigeria has borrowed from institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. With more than 232 million inhabitants in 2024, this country is the most populated in Africa. Number 7. Kenya. With 845 million euros of debt to France, China is the largest holder of bilateral debt in Kenya. Bilateral external debt represents 62.5% of total external debt, while total external debt represents 17.5%. Followed by Japan 13.4% of bilateral debt, 3.8% of total external debt, and France via the French Development Agency 7.4%, 2.1%. 64.1 billion euros is the historic amount of Kenya's public debt. The depreciation of the shilling is making debt repayments increasingly costly. The local currency has hit a record exchange rate of 143.44 shillings to the dollar. Kenya's population to exceed 60 million by 2024. Number 6. Tunisia. With 1.2 billion euros of debt, at the end of 2024, Tunisia's external debt was estimated at around $35 billion. Borrowed funds are often used to finance infrastructure projects, economic development and social programs. Part of the loans also serve to stabilize the economy, especially in times of crisis. Tunisia has taken loans from various countries, including European nations and Arab countries. Institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have also granted loans to Tunisia. An important thing to know is that the impact of debt is not the same from a rich country to a poor country. A poor country can easily lose its sovereignty because of debts. The influence of countries on African countries through debt is a complex phenomenon that has economic, political and social implications. Many countries, including former colonial powers, provide loans to African countries to finance infrastructure, health and education projects. These loans may be subject to conditions that influence the economic and social policies of the borrowing countries. Creditors can impose political or economic reforms in exchange for loans, which can influence internal governance and policies. Some critics argue that international loans and aid can reproduce dependency dynamics reminiscent of colonialism. Creditor countries may seek control over natural resources or other strategic assets in exchange for debts. Continuous. Number 5. Senegal. With 1.3 billion euros of debt to France, the rise in public debt remains a major source of risk for Senegal. The IMF and World Bank debt sustainability analysis maintains a moderate risk of over-indebtedness, with however very limited room for maneuver to absorb short-term shocks. In 2024, Senegal's public debt was estimated at around $11 billion. Senegal faces various challenges, including unemployment, dependence on imports, and the impacts of climate change, which complicate debt management. The country will have more than 18 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 4. Cameroon. With 1.4 billion euros of debt, the country remains heavily indebted, according to data recently published by the French Treasury. Cameroon faces several challenges, including uneven economic growth, high unemployment rates, and governance problems that complicate debt management. In 2024, Cameroon's public debt is estimated at around $20 billion. In this country, poverty is a complex and multifaceted problem that affects a significant proportion of the population. According to World Bank data, about 24% of the Cameroonian population lives below the national poverty line, with precarious living conditions. Cameroon is often ranked among the most corrupt countries in the world by organizations such as Transparency International. The country will have more than 28 million inhabitants in 2024. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new to the channel. We continue. Number 3. Ivory Coast. With 1.45 billion euros of debt to France, the weakness of the state's own resources is a burden that Côte d'Ivoire has been dragging around for more than a decade. Ivorian debt reached a record level of $46.2 billion. The majority of the country's debt, 61.8%, is external debt, amounting to $28.5 billion. The World Bank, with $3.9 billion, and the IMF, with $2.8 billion. The extent of this debt is now a matter of debate in Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast's external debt is forcing the country to cut food and fuel subsidies. Tensions in the country have arisen from the recent surge in electricity and fuel prices. Ivory Coast, faced with an explosion of its public debt, sees its budgetary resources suffocated by repayments, reducing its investment capacity and threatening its long-term economic development. The country will have more than 29 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 2. Egypt. With 1.5 billion euros of debt to France, the total foreign debt has risen to $168 billion in 2024. Since 2015, Egypt has increased its external debt by 4 times to support the construction of a new capital, building infrastructure, purchasing weapons and propping up an overvalued currency. The Ukrainian crisis has caused an exodus of foreign investors due to a chronic shortage of foreign currency. The government has been forced to seek help from the International Monetary Fund. The country will have more than 112 million inhabitants in 2024. And finally, number 1 is Morocco. Morocco is also ranked 17th among the most indebted countries by the International Monetary Fund. With more than 3 billion euros of debt to France, or 18% of the total African debt. Morocco's external debt amounts to more than $65 billion. According to the World Bank, Morocco is among the most indebted countries in Africa. Morocco faces several challenges, including high unemployment and regional inequalities, which complicate debt management. The country will have more than 38 million inhabitants in 2024. This is the end of the video. Take care of yourself and see you soon.